Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
There's an inspiring story behind one of the most moving hymns in history, and the Cooper and Newton Museum is the perfect place to discover it and learn more about the two friends that got together to write the songs that make some presidents sing. So on Marketplace in Olney is the Cooper and Newton Museum, and I'm here with Tom Jones.
Hello.
You're going to show me around?
I am. Would you like to go through the way that everybody over the centuries has been?
Yes, please.
Because it's the way that's least likely for William Cooper to lose his hairs.
Oh, right, okay. So where are we?
We are in, we call it Cooper's Kitchen. It's the oldest part of the museum, a cottage dating back to the 1600s.
Yes.
Which predated the main Georgian part of the building.
And there's like a layout, a spread of different food. So it's set out like a kitchen as it perhaps would have been. And there's something particular in the corner.
Well, there's a sugar loaf. We like to show the sugar loaf, which would have been popular in the Georgian period, with a pair of sugar snippers. A sugar loaf is a sort of bullet-shaped pile of sugar that would have been chopped up to go in the lady's tea or the gentleman's coffee.
So in medieval times, perhaps honey would have been the sweetener, but then there was this new ability to make sugar, or the discoveries made that you could get it from sugar cane, for example.
That's right. Sugar cane moved east to west through the Mediterranean, but it tended to decimate the islands as they went because they chopped all the trees down that they needed to boil it down. And they got as far as the Canaries and the Cape Verde Islands. And when America was discovered, they found a good place to grow it in the West Indies. And but sadly, it needed, or they felt anyway, that it needed slaves to produce it, and it gave rise to the triangular trade and the dreaded Middle Passage, where they were shipping slaves across from Africa to the West Indies.
And throughout the story in this museum, this is an overriding theme.
It's a theme because of the background of John Newton, who shares his name in the name of the museum, who was at one stage a slave factor and a slave trader.
Yes, and as we came into Olney, or is it Olney? As you just going to stop before we talk more. Is it Olney or Oney?
For a local will say Oney. Oney rhymes with pony.
Yeah.
But for those of you out of the area, it looks like Olney.
Yeah.
If you're being a little posher.
Yeah. So as you walk into the town from the Ouse Valley Way, there's a sign saying "Home of Amazing Grace."
That's right.
And this is very much the story of that as well.
It is indeed. It's the story of the friendship between Newton and Cooper, who wrote a series of 348 hymns together, in part to keep Cooper's mind occupied, as he was a melancholic. And one of those hymns, written by John Newton in the vicarage, which is just at the bottom of our garden opposite the church, was where Amazing Grace, the words of Amazing Grace, were written.
Okay, so throughout the course of this museum, we're going to learn more about the story of both William Cooper and John Newton.
That's right.
And their friendship.
That's right.
Right. So where do we go next?
We will step through into the hall.
Okay, so where are we?
We're now in the hall, which has the front door, but the front door that was never opened because of the escape of one of the three hares that Cooper used to keep as a pet.
Ah.
The children liked that side of things. They were called Puss, Tiny and Bess. And he had a bit of a menagerie of animals that were all good for his mental health. Even in those days, it was recognised.
Yeah.
We have a big portrait of Cooper from 1793, and the original frame there as well, which shows him in fine wig, leaning on his writing slope, and the writing slope itself is positioned underneath the picture.
Yes, you can actually see. So what's in the picture a long time ago is actually in front of us as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so it's a reminder that much of what you see when you go around the museum, and it's packed with things, I think we have 6,000 different exhibits, are mostly original. mostly owned by particularly Cooper, some by Newton, and others of the correct era that we've added over the years if appropriate.
And next to the picture, there's, well, it looks like a family tree.
That's right. It's a family tree that was kept, it wasn't hidden, but it was kept behind the picture, and it's the pedigree of the Cooper family. So they're a bit of an odd couple, Cooper and Newton. Newton from a fairly down-to-earth, not poor, but rough background in Wapping. His father was a sailor. And Cooper, whose great uncle was twice Lord Chancellor of Great Britain and has links going back to the to aristocracy and kings in medieval period. So on both sides of the family.
And this family tree proves his excellent pedigree. And so maybe not top drawer, but very close, certainly next level down, would you say?
Yes, this was a bit of a come down for him. So you're in a middle class townhouse here in Oney. And it's unusual in that most of the Georgian establishments you find in the country are usually upper crust establishments.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a little down market for Cooper.
Yeah.
When he eventually moved on from here in 1786, he'd been here about 18 years, he went to Western Underwood for a further 9 years into a considerably posher Georgian establishment because his relatives weren't very happy with him mixing with the hoi polloi down here in what was then really very rough town.
He's part of this, pretty good family, well established, and he was quite precocious, wasn't he? He was quite bright, and he was on for a very promising career in law.
That's correct. He went to local schools near Berkhamsted, where he grew up, and he was then sent to Westminster School, which was the leading public school of its day. He came out close to the top of his year, had a very good brain, very good memory. Could write and translate 4 languages. And so he went, as many did in those days, into the law. He was in the Middle Temple, then the Inner Temple in central London. It was a bit of a lad around the town. And his family controlled the management positions in the House of Lords. So they put him forward to be controller of the journals in the House of Lords. But the anti-Cooper camp decided they would examine him to make sure he was suitable. And it's one thing that Cooper couldn't stand was that sort of pressure.
Yeah.
And he went to pieces and sadly attempted suicide at that point.
Yeah.
And so he ended up in an asylum in St Albans for a year and then went to be with his brother, another bright chap who was a Cambridge Don and stayed in Huntingdon and met the Unwin family in Huntingdon.
Yeah.
But while there, the husband of the family, Morley Unwin, died.
Yes.
And so they were effectively homeless and looking for somewhere to go.
So William Cooper never married.
Correct.
But he did have a childhood, would you call it a crush? I don't know what you call these things, but in any event, that never came to anything. But he ended up not living alone. And do we learn more about that in the next room?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Shall we
shall
go
we-
that
shall
way
we
first?
wander on through?
Yes. Okay. So we're in a room, and there is a reference to the young lady called Theodora, who he originally got engaged to in here, but you won't see her name. She's on the writing cabinet that we have in here, as are her 2 sisters. The 2 sisters are mentioned by name, Lady Croft and Lady Hesketh, but she is down as anonymous.
Oh.
And I think it was something of a joke because everybody knew who Anonymous was, but so as not to remind perhaps Mary Unwin of this earlier engagement because they were engaged for a short period in the 1750s.
So William Cooper hadn't married, but he did form this friendship, or beyond more than friendship, with the widowed Mary Unwin.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. She was a little older. She was perhaps a motherly figure. I haven't mentioned that his mother died when he was 6.
Yeah.
something he had in common with John Newton as well. His mother died young. So yeah, she fitted the bill. They got on very well. They have the same religious inclinations at this stage. They wanted somewhere suitable to live with an evangelical vicar of some sort that they could study under. And Newton passed through at the right time and invited them back to Olney.
So in this room now, we get some sort of flavour of what their daily life might have been. And so there's a harpsichord?
Yes, Mary Unwin played the harpsichord. We've got cabinets with Cooper's coffee pot. They even played a form of badminton in here. They have a battledore racket here.
Yeah.
We've got a lavender bottle because he was a little bit foppish, Cooper. The lavender bottle was given to us by John Betjeman, who was the chairman of the Cooper and Newton Society about 40, 50 years ago, and always carried a copy of Cooper's poems around with him.
Maybe he got a bit of inspiration for his own poetry.
He did indeed, and he wrote a small poem called The Only Hymns, roughly in the style of William Cooper.
Yeah. And in the middle of the room is, well, what's this?
It's called a daybed. We call it a sofa. It's been recovered more recently, but the base, the mahogany base, is from the 1680s or 90s. It was the same one that was here in Cooper's day. He formed a friendship with a somewhat voluptuous young lady called Lady Austen, no connection to Jane Austen, who inspired him when he had writer's block to write some blank verse poem, a classical poem, while lying on the sofa. And it begins, I sing upon the sofa, this poem that made his name, really. It's called The Task.
Right.
He got a little carried away. It's in 6 volumes. It took us 5.5 hours to read it out loud publicly a few years ago. But it certainly made him famous. Robbie Burns used to walk around with it in his back pocket. The Romantic poets are very keen on it. The Brontes were keen on it. Virginia Woolf quoted it.
And we have some other works here of somebody else, another admirer of his work.
That's right. We're at the moment in the 250th anniversary of Jane Austen's birth, and she was one of his biggest fans. He was her favourite poet. Of the 6 main novels, Cooper is quoted and mentioned by name in 3 of those. And Mansfield Park is thought to be based, in terms of the themes in there, around the poem The Task. So she was a really big fan.
Yeah. Okay, and what next?
I think we should go up into the Newton room.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've come into quite a different room now. And in front, there's a cross-section through a ship.
That's right. This is our first John Newton room. John Newton, of course, never actually lived here. He lived in the village at the bottom of the garden. But his early life was very different indeed from Cooper's. He went to sea aged 11 with little education, and was, by his own definition, an insubordinate and very unpleasant young man. 2 things turned him round. One was meeting a very distant relative called Mary Catlett, who he called Polly, who he would later marry. And from that point onwards, he was trying to earn enough money to do just that. He ended up as a slave factor. So this is a land-based slave trader in Sierra Leone. We have a local charity called the Olney Newton Link. There's a town called Newton in Sierra Leone, which is where he was based. And he was tricked into returning to Britain. And on that return journey on a ship called the Greyhound, he was involved in a storm. They were nearly shipwrecked. And it was at that time, for the first time, that he said he arrived no longer an infidel. So it was his reconversion to Christianity again.
and growing awareness or realization of what he'd been involved in, perhaps.
Well,
Or not.
perhaps. we usually try to distinguish the two things, because he went on from that point and became first mate and captain on 4 slaving journeys in the early 1750s. Our first evidence that he was turning against it or realizing that there was something wrong with the occupation he'd adopted is in 1759. And bit by bit, we have more and more evidence that he turned against that trade altogether.
Yes. So it's not directly linked to a religious conversion, but it's perhaps a moral conversion, perhaps?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It wasn't seen in those days as a terrible business to be involved in, strange though it seems to us today. The first committee for the abolition of the slave trade was formed in 1787, so at least 30 years after Newton went to sea. But we know that they fed off each other, Cooper and Newton, because Cooper was very anti-slavery as well, and their sort of vehemence in that direction grew over the years. And so well before 1787, Cooper was writing anti-slavery poetry, for example.
Yeah. So this cross-section of the ship gives us an idea of what conditions on that ship will be like. And on the floor, there's a white painted rectangle which shows you how much space each person that was trafficked across the sea would have. So it's giving you the clearest indication of what life would have been like and the experience would have been of being trafficked like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it would have been horrendous. So the atmosphere in this room is rather different from the rest of the house because it's telling a completely different story, and not a local story either, not a national story, an international story that we're telling here as well.
Yeah. So where next?
Well, we'll go up the stairs into Cooper's bedroom next.
Okay. Right. So here we are.
We are now in Cooper's bedroom, where he used to look out of his window and gain inspiration by looking at the fairly poor and rough locals staggering to and from the local hostelries.
Yes.
There were 27 local ale houses and only in Cooper's day. But we've got quite a few interesting artifacts from the era. We've got Lady Austin's tea caddy,
Yeah.
the product that drove a lot of the growth in the need for sugar, and therefore the plantation economy that Newton was involved in. We've got a number of his original letters and documents, his original day cap. He was quite famous for wearing a day cap instead of a wig and being painted in it, which is quite unusual. And we also have a drawer with the pension that was awarded to Cooper by King George III and Pitt the Younger.
Yeah, and we can see that if we go over to this cabinet over here and pull out one of the drawers. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It was £300 a year
Yeah.
in 1794. And although he was offered the Poet Laureateship, he always turned it down. He could never write to order. But he wrote laureate-like poems at appropriate times, which were very useful for the government to use.
Yes. It's quite one of the interesting things about this museum is this notion that we're telling parallel stories. These people are linked, they're friends, but they're leading distinct lives. They have separate lives. They've been in very different places beforehand. And again, what we're standing in a room looking over a Georgian marketplace and getting a sense of things going on in parallel and understanding that, trying to get to grips with a tea caddy and a sugar loaf and all in Georgian finery at the same time as horrific things are going on elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And the enabling of this lifestyle. So we're better to actually get that sense of a parallel of the complexity of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where next?
We shall go up to the lace room.
Ah, okay. So this is what goes on in the town itself.
That's right. That was the biggest craft industry in the town
Yes.
for several hundred years. before boots and shoemaking made an entry.
Yes.
But we remained fairly poor because we basically dodged the Industrial Revolution altogether, which made us poor, but left us with a lot of nice buildings and facades in the town. So
Yeah.
an unspoilt look.
So you mentioned this drunken square, lots of pubs, but actually lots of women working away. It'd be women presumably working away.
Mostly women. Some men
Yeah.
did it as well, and it wouldn't necessarily be 100% of the time. So
Yeah.
they'd be working in the fields where they could.
Right.
This would be particularly a winter activity.
Yes. And so it's a lovely, bright, sunny day today, and lots of light. Wouldn't always be like that though. What would you do, particularly as you mentioned in the winter? So
That's right.
you've got a little exhibit here.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is an odd sort of structure to describe. It's a three-legged stool with four little columns running up off it, and on the top of each of those is a glass flask that can be corked underneath. And that would have been filled with melted snow water if they could get it, being the clearest form of water they could get. And a candle was placed in the middle, and it diffuses the light through the flask onto the lace pillow, and particularly in lace schools, the experts would sit closest, and the children around the edge learning how to make their lace, and that meant that they only needed one candle. They were
Yes.
so poor they could only afford one candle between the lot of them.
One candle, 4 pots of ice. But these
Yeah.
these glasses, they're sort of like flasks, aren't they?
They are. It's
Yeah.
from the German Flasche, so it's known as a flash stool,
Yeah.
and it's where we get the term flashlight from.
Right.
So
Yeah. So again, this notion of parallel lives in the museum. We're looking at daily life for many people here,
Yes.
and there's also something where we can get a bit of we can do I think what they call LARPing, where you can actually dress up and be a Georgian yourself in the next room.
you certainly can. You
Should we
certainly
wander
can.
through
Shall
and
we
have a
go
look?
through it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So presumably it says dressing up, family fun. So this is for the kids, right?
And on the face of it, it's for the kids, but actually we have just as many adult outfits, and they get as much enjoyment as the children do from this room.
So the kids, perhaps sometimes the kids get dragged up here.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
They have a little place where they can draw and spend some time if they
Yeah.
get bored looking at old artifacts as well.
So I can see a box of wigs and or something like that. Anyway, lots of goodies.
It's packed with things to put on, yes.
Yeah. So where next?
We're going to go down into the second Newton room.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, you said, the second Newton room.
That's right. Well, Newton had tried over at least a 7-year period to enter the Church of England. He'd been preaching in nonconformist churches, which didn't endear him to the Church of England. He also, of course, hadn't been to Oxford or Cambridge to university, which was deemed one of the requirements. So it took a bit of arm twisting to get his position. His autobiographical letters found their way into the hands of the only Lord of the Manor, who was the Earl of Dartmouth, quite a famous character in the country at the time. He was the equivalent of the foreign minister. He gave his name to Dartmouth College in America, and he was influential in getting his position here, which he was entitled to appoint to the position of vicar and curate at the church here, but he had to persuade the Bishop of Lincoln to allow him to do it. But he had the clout to do that.
Long wait, yeah.
A very long wait.
And so we've got some original books here.
That's
and
right.
Some of his writing as well.
Yes, most of the stuff here dates from his time in Only. He was here from 1764 to 1780, during which time he built up the congregation massively. And in this room, we've got part of a gallery since taken down in the church, because he had 2,000 people would sometimes turn up to some of his sermons. He after a while, effectively got promoted and was sent down to London to St Mary Woolnoth, which is the parish church of the Lord Mayor of London, and he stayed there for the rest of his life until 1807. But while he was there, he persuaded William Wilberforce, who he'd known since he was a child, who used to come and play here in Oney, persuaded him to stay in the Houses of Parliament and not join the church, something quite unusual for a churchman to try and do, because of the good he could do, particularly in getting rid of the slave trade, which he was very active in pursuing at that time.
Right. And so next door to that, we've got another room. It's about Georgian life. Is that
That's right. Originally, this would have been a separate house that all we walked through wouldn't have existed in Cooper's day, and this is where the servants lived. He used to complain they had more room than him. Now we call it the Georgian life room, but we've got a mock-up of Newton's study in the vicarage, which was where Amazing Grace, the words of Amazing Grace were written, including his sea chair and table and such like. We've got a lot of indirectly related items, such as miniatures of Cooper by William Blake. We have two of only 6 in the country of that. We've also got a few things that indicate our involvement here in the shoe business. Boots and shoes. We're always a big craft manufacturer of shoes, but we had a factory called Hindon Mann that employed 360 odd people at the beginning of the First World War. So we went into that in quite a big way, but still quite a manual occupation. Other than that, we have the Dartmouth Survey, which is the earliest map that we have of Oney, which gives us some indication of who lived where in the town over 200 years ago. On the wall, we have a facsimile of what's been painted in the study at the vicarage, and there were 2 quotes that he felt were appropriate. "Since thou wast precious in my sight, thou hast been honourable," from Isaiah, "and thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee." So one is a reference to his conversion on board the Greyhound ship, and the other is a reference to where he was actually locked up, actually treated almost as a slave in Sierra Leone for a few months before he was rescued, and a reminder of his own time as a slave trader, which he didn't want to ever forget.
Fantastic. So where next? Outside?
Outside into the garden, I think.
Well, this is rather nice.
Well, we're in the first of 2 walled gardens outside. Most of the locals here in Oney don't really appreciate that this exists, tucked away so close to the town centre. The first gallery here is full of 18th century varieties, because Cooper was a very keen gardener. Yet another thing he did to avoid his own melancholy. The second garden is more of an allotment turned apothecary's garden. It was originally owned by an apothecary, and we grow herbs and such like, but we also have a lot of our outdoor events in the garden at the back. And it's famous for having Cooper's summer house, which was acquired later in his stay here, which is like a man shed. He called it his bouderie, or his sulking house, where he wanted to be alone. And it's a little wattle and daub, separately listed little structure, big enough perhaps to squeeze 4 people in, but no bigger than that.
It's on the snug side. But you mentioned earlier, I mean, again, something that's been recreated, or there's at least a renewed awareness of the fact that mental health was incredibly important. His fragile health was something that was aided by having a garden, and maybe some of the things that were grown in it, but certainly being a garden. This is something that's being thought about now as well.
Absolutely. We always emphasise and as many events as we can, looking at people's well-being. We have well, apart from anything else, we have 170 volunteers who like to be here for that reason as well as all our visitors who come in and sit in the garden and enjoy the peace when all around you have hubble bubble going on in the background.
So having these parallel stories of John Newton, who went through some kind of first religious, then moral conversion, and we have the melancholic, William Cooper as well, but somebody who was also very capable, very gifted in writing verse, and they got together and they made they created the Olney hymns.
They did 348 hymns,
and then that took. Would you say that went viral? Is that the correct thing to say?
Well, it was extremely popular in this country for a considerable length of time, several decades. But many of those hymns found their way into hymnals in America. And it was there that Amazing Grace had the tune that we know and love today attached to it. And it was that really that made Newton's name and returned to the UK by way of America, and is certainly the source of a lot of our visitors today. We have a lot of international visitors from all around the world here for that reason alone.
And this museum, it was created actually quite a long time ago.
The museum dates back to 1900. It's 125 years old. There was a lot of, particularly Cooper's furniture and artifacts kept in the town for at least a decade prior to that, in a little room operated like a museum. So Cooper was perhaps the bigger name in those days in this country. And it's unusually for a literary museum. It's full of original Cooper stuff.
Yeah. So he was the big name, and there was. Am I right? So we talked originally about the friendship of John Newton and William Cooper, but actually there was another friendship in the creation of this museum.
Well, there was. Yes, we had Thomas Wright, who was the inspiration for the museum, and a local wealthy printer called Collingridge, who donated the building to the town. So it's now a charity run by a trust and operated largely by volunteers, with no outside funding for normal operations, only for major projects and such like that we have to apply for like everybody else.
And you mentioned that you get people from all over the world coming here. Perhaps it's something of a pilgrimage for some people from America? It
is, particularly from America. We have literary pilgrimages as well for Cooper. Yeah. Anyone interested in Mansfield Park from the Jane Austen Society often do Cottersbrook Hall in Northampton and come here as the afternoon event. But no, we get a lot of people from all over the world. We get Chinese churches, American churches here, and they often go to the church afterwards and sing Amazing Grace in its original site. Yeah.
So if you're walking along the Ouse Valley Way, you come in here. Might be worth just maybe ask who else is in the museum and why they're there. So it might be interesting to know who's here and who's visiting. Possibly.
You got me there. I'm not sure where you're going.
No. Sorry. I was just really getting at the fact that when you're coming here, you're coming to learn about Cooper and Newton, but also actually you're in good company. You're with other people who are coming, but from all over the world to do the same thing.
Absolutely. So although we're a local museum and we have some local artifacts, local Roman finds, for example, and Saxon finds, we have a truly international reach. Yeah. People come from all over the world to see us for both individuals, and an unlikely friendship.
Yeah. Well, this is a very good place to rest your feet, and after a long walk, thank you very much.
Thank you for interviewing me.